You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm chatting with sleep consultant and best-selling author. One of 6 children, this week's guest was surrounded by an ethos of entrepreneurship growing up. Opening up her own property auctioneering business at just 23, she quickly learned what it took to make an idea come to life and then, better yet, make a success out of it. Over the years, she established herself in her chosen space, but after having her first child and experiencing difficulty finding resources and information on sleep training, she decided to delve deeper into the field, and so Sleep Matters was born. Changing up careers completely, she swapped auctioneering for paediatric sleep consultancy, and since then she's become a best-selling author, amassed a huge following, and gained fans in quite a few celebrities. Talking me through her tried and tested method, building a powerful brand, and working with Vogue Williams, here's what it's like to be Lucy Wolfe. I kind of like to kick everything off, if you don't mind, by going all the way back and chatting a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. I believe you're from England originally. So what was it like growing up for you there? Were you always very entrepreneurial, or what was that experience like for you?
I guess I come from a family where my parents worked, they had their own business. And actually my grandmother had her own business. So I do think that I probably come from a background where entrepreneurship and initiative was encouraged. And I'm one of 6. And of the 6 of us, 4 of us own our own businesses. So
that's impressive.
I think it's, I'm not sure if it's that typical, but I think that probably says a bit about the environment that we grew up in. So I said my father had a business, he was a painting contractor, and, you know, from very early on, you know, we were encouraged to answer phones, make appointments, and be in that. And I guess my mom would have a really strong work ethos. And that was instilled with us from really early on, I have to say that.
And when it came time, I guess, to, you know, leaving school, figuring out what you were going to do for the rest of your life, did you always know straight away that you were going to go into owning your own business? Or did you maybe think you'd take some time to work for someone else? Or how did that pan out for you?
So when I had a different career than the career I have now. So I've been fortunate to have like a multi-dimensional career, I feel. And when I was leaving school, I was going into a profession, and I definitely wanted my own business. It was very important to me. So much so, by the time I was 23, I had my own business.
Oh, wow.
I was only telling this story to somebody recently, actually. So it's funny that you and I are now speaking about it, that I obviously was working, I had worked for people, I'd gone through college, and I had worked for people. And I had decided that I would be better suited to then branch out and go into my own steam. And I went to tell my parents. And I suppose that's that conversation that it can go either one of 2 ways. And what I recall is they were so supportive that they thought it was a great idea. And I had already sourced the premises that I wanted to let, and they came to look at it and kind of gave it the stamp of approval. And I suppose what I take from that looking back is that not everyone gets that security of you go with your idea and your parent says that's great. And I think that to have that seal of approval made a huge difference to me in the courage that you kind of need to have when you are setting out on your own, because it is a leap of faith. But I guess I love that whole taking a risk. I don't really like to use the word risk, but I do like, even now, and I'm much older, I do, and I would encourage my own children to kind of not be afraid of making choices that feel right for you, because there's learning in everything.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so important. And I feel like maybe with COVID at the moment, more people have had to sit down about and, you know, thought about what they are doing with their lives, and have maybe been more likely to take those risks, as you said, to actually go after what they want.
Yeah, and I think that, and I also think that even for me professionally now, during this challenging time of COVID, it's given all of us an opportunity to kind of reset and look at what looks like it's working or not working, and to make decisions, because it's always a process. We're evolving, and in business in general, there's no end. Like, you can keep going, you can keep diversifying and taking those opportunities as they arise. And I would be a big advocate of that. And I'll be a big supporter of women in business in general, but of course anyone in business.
Yeah. And so what you ended up doing now, I guess, it's very niche, and it seems like you really tapped into a corner of the market that maybe hadn't been touched before. But what was your business originally? Was it auctioneering?
Yeah, exactly. I had an auctioneering practice. Specialized specifically in residential sales. And I guess now you might call it a boutique business, but literally it was of its day that there was lots of people who had auctioneering practices and, you know, sole practitioners, and that did change over time, where there was more franchises that kind of emerged. But yes, I was auctioneering, and I also was lecturing in the CIT to people studying auctioneering, so professional practice and valuation. And I guess I had started having children, and I think often when you have children, it changes your mindset anyway. But for me, my oldest child, he's going to be 18 actually this week. He didn't sleep, or he was sleeping and then he didn't sleep. And when I was looking for support, there was no support. And I guess I just filed that away, and I had my practice and I was working away, and then I had another child, and then my husband was working with me. We were working in the practice together. And I guess a few things happened, but ultimately I didn't envisage myself doing what I was doing forever. And I just felt that I had more to give in a different area. And as I went on to have my first two children, the issues around sleep were really, really obvious. And the fact that it was a completely unsupported area is really what struck me and resonated with me. And so as I was becoming almost disenchanted with my original career path, this other career path was potentially opening up, that I felt I had more to give. And then there was this opening, if you like, because it was under-resourced. And so I then decided that I would, retrain, re-educate. And I wasn't sure how I was going to, let's say, how that was going to evolve. Was I going to keep my practice? Was I going to, and I wasn't sure how it was going to unfold, but I knew that I was going to do something different. And again, that support comes into play. My husband's very supportive of, let's say, decisions that I was making. Again, my parents are there in the background, very supportive. And I just felt that I needed to become the person that I felt I needed when I was a new parent at that time. And so that's how it grew from there. And yes, you're right. It was an area in Ireland specifically where the options weren't there for parents who were struggling. And as a result of that, I then created this role.
I think that's great, though. I think that I always love hearing, stories that people really fixed a problem for themselves and were able to turn it into a business. But did you ever have any moments where you did make a big career change, and for some people that could have potentially been daunting to essentially go back to square one with something new? Did you ever feel nervous about making that career change, having built such a solid foundation for yourself with the auctioneering business that you had? Did those feelings ever cross your mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely. However, I don't know, it seems that although I had doubts and fears and I wasn't sure how it was going to play out, and for a while I did have the two sort of activities running alongside of each other, because I suppose I was afraid of letting go of, let's say, my auctioneering piece in case the other piece didn't work out. But as soon as the sleep business, it kind of had a life of its own and it overtook let's say, my auctioneering practice in terms of my attention and where my desires were lying. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
And although I did, of course, I was worried, I had total faith in it at the same time. And I can't really explain it to you properly, but I actually knew it was going to work. And I guess I think that I was willing to do whatever hours it took and however. Does that make sense to you? So that I could be the person that I felt I wanted to be, but I also wanted to be what I might describe as being the leader in that role. So that was, there were other people potentially doing sleep in different, children's sleep in different dimensions. I wanted my name to be synonymous with sleep in Ireland. And that was a real big goal of mine. And I don't really know if I've achieved that, but I do know that I am well known for children's sleep now.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say, I think you definitely have achieved that.
Well, it was great to hear it back that I have, but I wanted that to be the case. So I had specific goals that I had, I guess you might say, that I was trying to manifest. And, you know, my goal set was like, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to be, you know, the best person in my field. And that was very important to me. And then as a result, I did wind up my auctioneering practice. And I did that with a full heart, actually, because I felt that everything that I learned from my business there and my lecturing and all of my interactions with people, I was able to bring to my new business. And that like nothing is wasted. Everything, you know, is used. It's just in a different format.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you could have translated a lot of what you learned, especially since it was your own business that you were doing first. And if you could take me all the way back to day one of Sleep Matters, how did you go about developing your method and making sure that you did, as you said, you know, carve your own space in the industry and make yourself known?
I think first of all, it came from training, taking lots of training and education programs and learning about lots of different ways of doing things, soaking that in, taking what resonated and what didn't resonate. But mostly then once I had completed the education side of things, and look, you're never done with the education side of things. I continue to do professional development. I can continue to do, you know, further studies. But when I, let's say, first completed I had done 3 or 4 different courses. Then I guess taking what I had learned and what other, you know, the mentors on those courses, the learning really was in the practice. So that getting people, working with people, and that over time of working with lots of parents, then I was able to refine my approach. I was able to see what seemed to work and what didn't seem to work, and that was able to continue to build that into what has ended up being the Stay and Support approach. I guess it came from what I might describe as being practice-based evidence, that by continually working with people and following, you know, a theme that had been already created and taught to me, that then I was able to move it forward into what it's become now.
And for anyone that doesn't know your work or hasn't heard of what you're doing, can you just give a brief overview of what your method is, and then I guess why it does work so well?
Yeah, and I suppose what I should have said is that when my first child was born, and that I was struggling with sleep deprivation, it was under-resourced, as I said, but the only approach that seemed to be out there was, if you wanted your child to sleep well, you need to let them cry it out, which means leaving your child on their own to cry. And that, for me as a parent, didn't sit well. So it took me a lot of time as just a parent to sift through information, to read books, to figure out what I felt right for me as just a parent navigating a tricky situation. And one of my desires when I started this business was that the approach should be emotionally appropriate, that I would try and change the narrative around leaving children to cry, and that's the only way that you can help a child sleep, and that children need to be sleep trained, and to take all the negatives that come with the infant sleep world, and to try to create a family focused, child-centered and emotionally appropriate approach. And that's really then what evolved into what is now called the stay and support approach. But it's more than that, because the stay and support approach is just, let's say, how we help a child to transition from whatever they might need to transition from where the sleep is concerned. But it's a holistic approach that takes everything into account. So it takes the circadian rhythm into account. It takes everything, that they're eating, everything they're drinking, everything they're thinking and feeling, everything the parents thinking and feeling. And it takes all those elements together. And then it also takes the behavioral element of sleep into account. And by pulling those dimensions together, then a family can start to help their child developmentally improve their sleep. So not looking for unrealistic expectations, not looking to allow your child to cry on their own to help them sleep better, but for that child to achieve their personal best where sleep is concerned in a gentle and sensitive way. And I guess that is why it has become so popular in terms of it's consumer friendly. Parents are being helped to help their children learn to sleep better, but they're not compromising their parenting values. I'll always support parents in the decisions that they're making, but my whole drive was to give that other option to a family. And I suppose, in the last, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, obviously parenting approaches have changed and they've evolved, but to respecting the child as an individual, respecting the family unit as being completely unique, as taking that and then taking the elements, the behavioral, the environmental, the psychological, taking all of those aspects into account and then helping a child and a family unit sleep better. Yes, absolutely. It is a far greater way of helping families achieve their children's sleep.
As you said earlier, one of your goals was to write a book and to compile all of your studies into one place. So you do have that book, The Baby Sleep Solution. Can you tell me what it was like going through that process of writing your own book?
For me, I said that quite, I had a little list of things that I really wanted to achieve in terms and writing a book. But I suppose more than that, historically, the books that are available to parents, and I was one of those parents, I used to always feel very anxious when I was reading them, that they sort of had a tone that made parents maybe feel like they weren't doing the right thing, that they had caused the problems. And I guess one of the goals for me was to maybe write a book that helped parents feel good about themselves as parents, and to resonate with them and to tell them that you're doing a great job, and these aren't fake, there's no such thing as accidental parenting and these sort of buzzwords that have been used. And so while I'm in the book itself, it was that the tone of the book would be open to everybody, that when they would read it, they wouldn't get that knot in their stomach that maybe I had when I was reading books when my children were really little. And so the other part of that was that my practice became so busy that I couldn't service all of the people that were needing support. And yet I did feel that my approach was worthy, if you like, of being available to a greater market. So I suppose there's two things there, but of course it's all very well having that. You need someone to agree to publish you. And so that when then I initiated contact with Gill, the publishing group, and I was able to pitch to them the idea. And I was fortunate in so much that I had a television profile, I had a busy, at the time, Facebook profile, and I had lots of reviews, and I also had this tried and tested method. So then I had a contract to write a book. And I suppose doing all of those things almost were the easy bit. Writing the book I found really difficult, because I suppose I was working full time. I've got 4 children, and I was even trying to find time to write the book, but I did. And the first book, The Baby Sleep Solution, is 3.5 years old. And then this year, actually, I had a second book, but I'm not surprised you don't know about it because it came out the same week that lockdown happened. I know. So that one, the second book is called All About the Baby Sleep Solution. So the first book is the master copy. It covers from birth to 6 years of age. And from that, parents can sleep shape from the early months, and they can do sleep learning in the later months if they need to. And it is a handbook, really, that helps them create a plan on their own, as if they were working with me, but doing it all on their own. And the second book was born of, I guess, my social media platforms. So I mentioned Facebook earlier, and then I have a very busy Instagram profile as well. And whenever I do television or radio, the questions that come in are always, there's so many questions, we never get through them. So the second book was born of questions that parents ask. So it takes the approach and it just fine tunes it even further based on specific questions that parents have around their children's sleep, and it carves sleep up into segments. So what was happening is that, had the book, people were reading the book, I was doing, presentations, I was doing group settings, and yet people would always have lots of questions because it was specific to them. And so that's what the second book does. It distills the specific questions that parents have. So I guess you can use them separately or together, and they're both obviously a very good resource for parents. And again, it just really underpinned further the approach, and it formed the first book informed the second book, because in that time frame people were coming to me and saying, I did this, but I found I had a problem with this. And so it was very different to when I work with people individually, because they were doing it themselves, and I was able to cover in the second book the diluting influences that when you are using maybe book one, the questions that come up for you, so that parents now use them together a lot of the time. It's just trying to, I guess I call it sharing my craft, because of course I have a private practice, and that is where I spend all of my time, and that's where all of my effort is spent, working with parents on a one-to-one basis. But I am only one person, and I can only get to so many people, in a week, and I can only support so many people in a month. And so I think the fantastic thing is that the books are, let's say, an extension of me, done in a way that I could never have reached anybody individually. So that's what I love about the books. It's amazing. And the book itself, is really popular here in Ireland. It's super popular in the UK, and it has been spotted on the Tube in New York and in different countries as well. So, it's wonderful, and it's just a brilliant extension of what I do here.
And leading on from that, just there, when you mentioned the UK, I've obviously seen you on TV, on Irish TV, but the one place where I've actually seen you the most is on Vogue Williams' Instagram account.
I know, right?
She's a big fan of you. So can you maybe tell me how, and you touched on like your social media followings there as well, what do you think your secret to building your brand was, and how did you attract the likes of those celebrity clients and really get your name out there?
I suppose it changed hugely. So I'm 10 years in practice now. And if you think about 10 years ago, there wasn't Instagram. And I even think the accessibility to celebrities wasn't as high as maybe it is now that came with Instagram, perhaps. So I guess in the early, all along, never mind the early, it is all about word of mouth from parents on the ground, recommending me, working with me, recommending me, talking about me in what used to be forums, in Facebook groups, in mummies, pages and things like that. And even Vogue ended up as a client of mine, but just based on people recommending her to me. And obviously she's based in the UK, but she is Irish, and I think initially she came, lots of people had recommended her, but I think her cousin had recommended her to me as well. So she came to work with me in a private capacity. And at that stage, Lucy, I had a really small Instagram following. I didn't have a big following. I had a busy Facebook page, and I had a very small Instagram. I was only just starting to build my Instagram profile, by making videos and sharing information. And at that stage I did have a book, so I was able to, let's say, tie in the information from the book and just kind of again underpin it further. But actually Vogue Williams made my Instagram blow up, if that's a way of describing it. That yeah. I think the night before she posted about me, I think I probably had 7,500 followers. And then she posted about me, and I think within like a 12-hour period, I had 20,000 followers.
Oh, wow.
And
Crazy.
like, first of all, she's an amazing person to work with. She's incredibly generous because obviously she knows that she has an Insta power. But like, she made my book, that at the time was, I think, 2 years old, go back into the top 10 of book sales. And I guess she opened me up to the English market, which I hadn't really been opened up to, despite having grown up there, and that I was very much Irish based, and Vogue extended that for me. Now, I had already had, you know, a slight profile, but certainly it's like you said yourself, the most you see me is on Vogue profile. And yes, it's been a lovely relationship between the two of us. I obviously have helped with Theodore, and you know, obviously Gigi is only very young yet, but you know, she's currently using my books in an effort to try and lay that foundation. So yes, it was unbelievably powerful what she did where Instagram and the book sales that year were concerned. No, it's a responsibility. Like, certainly last year, when all this was happening, like the Instagram, and don't forget, it's just an advertising platform for me. It takes up a lot of time. And that's really difficult because I am just a sole practitioner. I just work here myself. I don't have anybody working for me. But of course, I do need to mention that my husband, he does all my book sales, all right. So I'm not, and he keeps the show on the road here as well. So, but I suppose from a business point of view, it just is me.
Yeah, no, that would be a lot though, to manage all of your social channels and your clients and book sales and all of that kind of thing. I can only imagine how overwhelming it might get sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's busy. And I suppose the problem with it, let's say when it's to do with sleep, people are in crisis when they reach out.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like they want to know what dress I'm wearing, because they definitely don't, but they want specific advice, and that's not always available in a DM. Like, it's a much more involved process than that. But yeah, it's a great way of, again, connecting with people, which is, I love connecting with parents.
And do you think that this is something that you would ever, I mean, in terms of future growth and everything, franchise out or set up offices elsewhere and take more people into your team? Or do you always just want it to be you one-on-one with all of your clients?
Yeah, I think at one point, I think I may have looked for that first option that you mentioned, but I really feel I love just to have it contained. Like, there are obviously other people that do what I do, and so like there are options for people to see people sooner, because I often have a long wait list. But no, I think, and of course I could change my mind, but I think really at the moment I just like it to be small, me working with my one-to-one clients, select amount of people on a weekly basis, and then the extension of that being the books. I love what I do. I love working with parents, you know, on the ground, one-to-one. I really, really love that. And I suppose as long as I love that, I'll keep doing it. And as long as there are parents that want to work with me, then that's my privilege, my absolute privilege, to be that person, that support person for them. And so, like, it's great for me. I love it.
And I think it's so clear from anyone that knows about you or that is listening to this right now that you have definitely experienced success twice over with both of your businesses. So do you have a personal definition of what the word success means for you?
Funnily enough, I guess, like most things, it probably has changed as I have evolved as a person. And I think that it's wonderful to be professionally successful. But I actually think success to me is that, you know, I am happy, that I'm in a good place with myself and with my family, and that I guess I think that actually is more accurate definition of success for me now. Where of course the external, you know, the elements, you know, a waiting list, you know, book sales, top tens and stuff, that is all wonderful. And I suppose once you've achieved that, maybe that diminishes it. But I suppose for me, really, I'm happy to be, you know, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I can make good decisions for myself. I've got 4 children. They're growing up. They're lovely, and we have a lovely family life. And to me, actually that is probably the better definition of success for me.
And then, so I have one more question for you, and I'm going to let you get on with your afternoon. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through everything you've been through, both in life in general and just your career, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give that 10-year-old self moving forward in life?
Oh, so well, I think it's interesting that you bring up, the little girl, because in a lot of the work that I do and the training that I have done and continue to do, it is about, the relationship with yourself, and, how a lot of what we experience stems back to our childhood and how we have responded and reacted to things. So, I put a lot of emphasis on that, that little girl, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
And I would say that growing up, certain things affect you, and I definitely didn't ever feel good enough, right? Or maybe clever enough or smart enough. And I think that I would tell my 10-year-old self that you are all of those things and more. And I do try to, let's say, make sure that my own children feel that, because that not feeling that you're good enough. And I know that might sound strange because, we've talked about things that have been good, professionally successful, but that never takes away from maybe how you feel about something in a certain situation. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would, and I'm sure that it was told to me lots that I was good enough and clever enough and able enough. And I told you about my parents being a huge support. But I guess I would tell my 10-year-old self that anything is really possible. And, even I think it's quite relevant at the moment because the Leaving Cert results coming out and people are worried about this defining them. And there are so many different routes to whatever you want. And there is no one, like, you don't necessarily end up doing for life what you set out to do when you were 17. Does that make sense? I'm sure it does, because I know you hear it all the time. But that is, it's so true, and that nothing is wasted at all. All of the opportunities and all of the disappointments all move you forwards towards your actual, what you're meant to be doing. And I have almost a mantra that, you are where you need to be. And I know that it's not always easy to be objective around that, but it is so true. And it's in hindsight, you can look back and say, oh, that was meant for me. But I suppose if we could live in the now and embrace it, that would be so wonderful. And I've gone off topic with my little girl and my 10-year-old self, but I suppose it's just to be encouraging and, to encourage that self-belief and to nurture that. And to just know that even when it doesn't seem like it's, it's all working out, there is something working out for you. And, there is a lot, I believe in synchronicity, I believe in connectivity and all of those things. And that, if you are working hard and you're having belief and you're ambitious, then I feel that, really you can achieve whatever you like to achieve.
No, I love that. That's such a good piece of advice. But I just want to take this time to thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to me. I know you have a crazy hectic schedule, so it's been really enjoyable, and thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you so much for reaching out. It's been so lovely to speak with you today, Lucy.
Thank you so much for listening. And as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode. To find out more about Lucy and her method, visit the links in the show notes. I'll be back on Thursday with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.